I am thrilled. This episode's really exciting to get a chance to get Jason McCoy uh, on the podcast. I'm so excited. Known Jason for years, and big congratulations, by the way, on the recent certification of a platinum record with Mud, with the Roadhammers project. After all these years, are you just shocked and amazed that the industry still embraces you the way it does, and you guys still get all the love you do from the fans? I mean, it must be pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting with like personally, I'm still, a 10-year-old kid with a guitar in a bedroom trying to figure out George Jones songs, right? Like I always feel like the grown-ups are going to show up anytime and say, get them, give me that guitar back, and what do you think you're doing, right? But with the Hammers, it's a whole different thing. It's kind of like there's a fearlessness to it because you're in a gang, right? You're not by yourself. So people say, what do you like better, playing in a solo band or with a band, or a solo group or with a band? And it's got its pluses and minuses. Like, one, you make all the decisions, and one, you don't, and they're both great. With the Hammers, getting all the industry love that we still do is amazing. But that comes from the fact that there's so much talent within the band, and I'm just a small part of that. If you take any one of us away, it's not the Hammers anymore. But we don't put out we don't put out a ton of records. I think we put out like 5 records, and
I think 4, and maybe
4.
4. Yeah,
I think it's more of an underachiever than I thought. But it's
last record was 2017. Are you guys going to drop a new one, or what's the plan there?
If I get off my butt and get my singing done, yeah. Actually, Chris and Clay have been really great in pushing things along. I've got a few vocals I got to do, and we're doing really good for like 2 or 3 songs we've got in the can that are really, they're that Hammer thing, right? And it's interesting because the more the music industry changes, it's nice that the Hammers have their own niche and we have our own sound, and it can't be affected by other genres, or can't be affected by trends, but it happens, right? Because you go chasing things like, oh, this is popular on radio, maybe we should do this and all that. But if we just ignore that for a little bit, we can get our thing together. But it takes a while to find those little pebbles in the pile of rock, right? But I think we've got 3 that are really on that Hammer head, pardon the pun.
Right. And that's really all you need. And you guys have really pushed the envelope at what was what was sort of more acceptable in terms of country rock fusion at Canadian radio, because for a long time, everybody was really playing the game. And now if you listen to a guy like Corey Marks, I don't know if you've listened to the record Who I Am, but it's like, it's not exactly the same as a Hammers record by any means, but it's in that same vein. And you guys really laid the groundwork for something like that to get some acceptance and love and respect, not only from the industry, but from the fans. I mean, your 2005 effort, the first self-titled record, was just so bold in that direction, but also so successful. So how did you come up with the idea? You've been this successful male country artist for a long time. You're crushing it in the solo space. You're winning Male Artist of the Year at the CCMAs, and then all of a sudden you're like, nah, I want to try this alter ego thing, and I want to go rock and roll.
Yeah. To be quite candid, not to dive too deep, but it all came from insecurity and depression. I mean, I've always had this nagging, not good enough, don't belong, don't fit in kind of thing, which we all have to fight, and that has to be put aside. But sometimes I let that flood over, and I was coming off Sins, Lies, and Angels, and my second CCMA Male Artist of the Year win. So why wouldn't anybody be on a high and have all the confidence in the world? I don't know. But I was really empty inside. Like, I didn't know what to do. I felt like I didn't really have an idea where to go with another record. I didn't know what the industry was doing. There was a bit of a musical divide there at the time. Shania was really taking off on the pop side. There was still that George Strait thing. It was that typical thing of country. It's really country. It's really pop. And country is nice that it has wide enough arms to accept all those genres. But right up the middle of that, I was like, oh, I don't have anything in me. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I was talking to Ted Ellis, who was running CMT at the time, and Ted was the 5th Beatle on this whole project. And I said, maybe I just should do like a tribute record of trucker songs, because I was listening to all these old Dave Dudley things at the time. And I remember this vinyl LP I was really digging from when I was a kid that I'd found. And I said, maybe I'll put together like a traveling Wilburys, like a bunch of famous musicians, And he said, oh, well, this is during the time of reality shows. And he said, well, maybe we'll film that and show you the making of. And that turned into, hey, let's put a band together and have auditions. And it just exploded from there. And it was like a river running, like in a deluge of rain, where it just goes over the banks and goes where it's supposed to go. And I had absolutely no control. And that was the best thing for my psyche was being out of control. Because when I didn't have the chance to second guess everything to death, which I'm, fairly prone to do. And we just ran with it. And Scott Baggett, my longtime producer on the solo side, it was kind of one of those things where I'd always been wanting to be Randy Travis, but I always had this rock and roll kind of side too, but I could never sing it because I got this country voice, And along comes Clay, and Chris is the blues guy, and you put the three together, and it's like, we can do anything we want. So add in a little NRBQ, Big Al Anderson, some wacky blues stuff and some bluegrass, and you got the Hammers. And it was kind of everything Scott had wanted to do sonically as a producer and everything I wanted to try that I never knew I could be part of. And it just worked.
Yeah, it was so bold at the time. And I think you're being a little bit hard on yourself, though, creatively, because you had the ability to diversify within the format, and we really saw that with Honky Tonk Sonatas. And what was that, 2001? When you dropped that record, that's a record that could have come right out of Bakersfield, California at the time. And I knew that's at the time, that's where your mind was creatively, that's where your heart was, that's what felt right to you. But that record stands the test of time. I had to listen to it recently, and it's just like, wow. It's such a great record, and I think you definitely, like, you've had these ideas about what you wanted to chase, but over and above that, you've also allowed yourself to take some real creative risks at times. And that certainly was one of those projects. So what was in your head at that time that was pushing you in that direction?
I had done Dixieland and all these, the singles that and I'd always worked with Scott Baggett and still do with the Hammers and all that. But I decided I wanted to just try a couple of different things. And my oldest friend in Nashville is Odie Blackman, and he's a very well respected and successful songwriter now. But at the time, I was kind of staying on his sofa when I was down there, and he was eating ramen noodles and the typical Nashville story. And we had the similar, Buck Owens, vein in our DNA. And so we would write a lot of these really honky tonk songs that at the time they're not going to get cut, but we just loved them. And Gary Allan was just starting to break, and he was friends with Gary from early on, wrote a bunch of songs for him, like Nothing On But the Radio and stuff. And I said, well, we go in and we write a song, and then Odie would produce the demo, or we would together. And I said, why don't we just produce a record? So let's kind of make it really kind of left, and let's make it, Jim Lauderdale kind of thing, like Honky Tonk Sonatas, which Jim wrote. And then Gary, came on and did the duet. And I actually toured with Gary a bit as a guitar player, just kind of sitting back on stage. And
just for the audience, I just want to clarify, Gary Allan, the Gary Allan.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, we'd go out, and we were playing at Buck Owens' club in Bakersfield, and I was there the night. This is really cool because I was there the night that I didn't meet Buck that night, because Gary got to go upstairs and hang with Buck, right? And we were all on the bus, and it was quite a while. I think they maybe got into drinking or something, but Buck loved Gary because Gary always really flew the Bakersfield banner high, And Buck gave him that night, he gave him one of those red, white, and blue guitars, but not one of the mass-produced knockoffs that everybody had. He gave him one of the original copies, and I don't know who made it, like Harmony or something, I can't remember, but he gave him one of the original guitars, like in the original shipping box from the 50s, and it was mind-boggling. It's sitting there on the bus, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So there was something to that whole Bakersfield sound, and I loved Merle Haggard, I loved Buck Owens, and I loved guys later like even up to the Dwight Yoakam stuff, guys who drew.
Yeah, Dwight Yoakam, George Dukas, obviously Gary Allan. These days you're getting a little bit of that from John Party, some neo-traditional and a little bit of Bakersfield sound.
And I wrote one of my favorite singles, "Still," which Colin Linden in Canada produced. I wrote that with George Dukas. So I went in, and I sat with George, and I was like, I want to write something that sounds timeless and be like a Dwight kind of thing that Pete Anderson would produce, you know. And
Yes.
so, and it was a focused thing, and that Bakersfield sound is one of those things. It's like, you know how Norm Macdonald sounds really dumb, but he's the smartest guy in the room, right? And that's what Bakersfield country is. Like when you listen to Buck and Don Rich and they're doing that stuff, it sounds like a bunch of hillbillies playing 3-chord country songs. But to do it right takes such a sophistication of writing and musicianship and delivery that, you know, metal guys, blues guys, they listen to it and they're like, holy smokes, that's something. And that's what that Bakersfield sound is. It's an eloquence within country that just has a timelessness to it.
That is a great word, an eloquence. And I think that applies across all genres. I mean, that's why you can find people from the metal world who dig certain aspects of country music because they respect and understand the musicianship. They understand the craft of the songwriting that goes into it. And that's
Yeah.
where, you know, when we talk about art, its ability to erase borders and remind us of our similarities and sort of take away some of our differences and create some real unity. And you know, I always joke that politicians like to tell us that they're all about unity, but all they do is remind us of our differences and pit us against one another for the most part. And musicians, they take those things away and they remind us that we can be united around a great beat, a great melody, and respect for the music, no matter what genre it falls into. If it takes a certain amount of mastery, there's just, you know, like I'm not a jazz guy, but if I sit back and listen to a jazz record, I can appreciate it. I can understand it. I can respect it. Right. And I'm sure you have that too, as it comes to other formats of music.
Well, like Merle Haggard always had Roy Nichols on guitar and
Right.
all those guys who skirted the jazz world. So if you know, my dad loved Merle Haggard, but he had no idea that these guitar players were playing jazz runs, you know, and all that stuff where Haggard got into the '80s like that. That's all jazzy stuff, and that like it comes off as country, and there's that thing of like they're taking this sophistication. It's like having a fighter jet parked in your driveway, but you only fire it up when you really have to, right?
Yeah.
And they've got all the horsepower they could ever want, but they're only going to do what they need to really complement the song. It's not a bunch of wheedly deedly stuff, right?
Right.
But anyway, I that's just me riffing on jazz. I like all that stuff.
And one thing that I really find interesting about you is especially in the last few years, you've been very open, very transparent about your difficulties with mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways, and I know this from having personal conversations with you, that neuroticism, whatever you want to call it, has also pushed you to be a genius creatively. You know, you talk a little bit about feeling like you didn't belong and then driving the Roadhammers project out of that. I mean, how much of that dichotomy of wrestling with feeling like you don't belong, depression, has actually driven you to be a better artist?
At the expense of my family and you know, personal happiness, probably 99% of it. It's amazing that, you know, it's like you come off this explosive creative moment, you know, and it's just a short little bit, and then you stay in bed for a year. You know, it's like why would anybody
Isn't
do
when
that?
you're creating, isn't that when you're at your best? Like, isn't that when you feel like you're alive and on fire, or are you too worried about what the marketplace is going to judge it as? Like how are you
Yeah.
navigating that process internally as you're going through it?
It's been changing, and actually, it's you know, as you get a little older and you get a little more miles on you. Now I'm doing radio, which gives me you know, an actual schedule. All that helps with the mental stability, where you're kind of like, you know, life is great. Like actually, you know, having time off during the pandemic, it seems like everybody be sad we're not touring, which I am. I like touring, but at the same time, I feel really relieved because, you know, my son and I will start a project on a Sunday. We won't get to it all that night, and then we'll put it aside and say we'll come back to it on Saturday at the end of the week, or we'll do it in the evenings. You know, Dad doesn't have to do anything feverishly in 3 days because he's gone for 2 weeks. Like
Right.
it's a normal life. And who knew that, you know, taking off and going out in the boat for a day on Saturday is like, that's real living. Heading off to an airport, eating at a Tim Hortons and then seeing a Ramada hotel for the afternoon, doing a gig and off to the airport. That's not real life. And it's something you have to be very aware of. So, but as far as the creative stuff goes, I've been there. Let me back up a little bit, not to get too deep about this stuff, but I've had back issues since I was like 17, 16 years old. I got hurt at work when I was quite young. And I mean, I've not been out of pain for years and years. And I've been getting I've been getting my back worked on and just had a surgery as well to help kind of figure things out a little more. And it's really been helping. And so that has been a big, it's been a pain in my back. And that's really helped me kind of calm down a little bit and help me sleep and help me get into better physical shape. Which, when you have back pain or any kind of pain, and I don't really have real pain compared to maybe other people, but I find it to be quite a bit. But now that I've started to come out of that, man, I've been getting in better shape, going for walks, going for a jog, eating well, actually sleeping, which I haven't done for years. And my creative side is just exploding. So it's like everything, that you've ever heard from your parents, eat well, get good sleep, take care of yourself. Now that I'm starting to get better health, those kind of things are helping. And now my creative side is just exploding, and I feel better than ever.
Yeah, who was it that said a healthy man has 1,000 wishes and a sick man only has one?
Mhm.
I mean that's incredibly poignant. At times like this, when
Yeah.
you realize, like, if you don't have your health and you're not taking care of the temple, like,
Yeah.
you can't really have anything.
Mhm.
And so it's great to see that you're back on track on that front. You're looking great, by the way. You've lost
Get
some
back
weight.
on track. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not, cramming down a whole pile of painkillers to sleep and, wake up and all that. And that stuff will kill you, man. But
literally.
literally. But
Yeah.
no, it's things are going pretty good.
Good. So you're in a good creative space now. What's next for you? Are you going to put out another solo record? You talked about the Hammers project. Like, what is in the immediate future for Jason McCoy?
Well, I do radio with Pure Country 106, so
Of
that's
course.
the daily thing, and I'm so happy for that because I'm, I guess, the only musician with an actual job right now, which is wonderful. But it's kind of inspiring too. So I've been writing a lot because you hear all these songs go by, and you're up with the trends and all that, and it's inspired me to write. So I've got a bunch of solo stuff kind of ready to go. I just have to get some singing done on it, a few guitar parts. There's the Hammer songs, as I mentioned, but right now the focus is the Hammers. I mean, the guys are chomping at the bit to get going. We're hoping that next year we can see a return to touring, which is what we do best, and just ripping it up on the stage.
And the nucleus of the Hammers obviously is you, Clayton
Chris,
Bellamy, Chris Byrne. But how did you select those guys, or how did you guys come together in formation to create this thing?
yeah. Well, Chris was in my solo band playing
Right.
bass, and then we were doing the TV show. We're holding auditions, and Chris was pretty much a shoe, and I just knew he'd be the guy. There's
His
nobody.
character.
Oh my god, he's the best. And then Clay, I mean, I had seen Clay play at the Calgary Stampede once. We were playing one of those big tent things, and he was at the other stage, and I went to see him one night, and I'd heard about him, and it was like, oh man, he's really got that kind of rock and roll country edge thing. And then as we were doing auditions for the show, or getting ready to, I had a bust out in Calgary for some reason. We went down to 17th, and Clay was playing a bar there, and I took my wife down to say, "Oh, this is Clay. This is a guy I think is going to be in the band." And we walk in, and he's got no shirt on. He's got the microphone, and he's crawling across a table full of drinks and smashing them on the ground and stuff. And she's like, "No," and I was like, "Yeah." So it was great. And then Corbett Fraz, who was our original drummer,
Right.
good friends with Clay because they'd played in bands together, And Corbett was just like I've never met a funnier guy. Like he is so. He's just got every comeback. It's almost like he's got a Rolodex of comebacks all ready to go, and he's like a computer.
Yeah.
And he's just got this really sharp wit and a lot of fun to travel with on the road too. So it was such a fun group to travel with in this uncharted territory that we were taking off on, like pirates on the highway or something.
That's so cool. Yeah, and if you follow Corbett on social media, his sense of humor really shines through in that. Man, that guy
18
is
plus, 18 plus.
always doubling me over. But yes, it's not something exactly you're going to read in front of your kids.
No.
Another thing about you, and it parlays very well into this conversation about the career you've had in radio, is you've always been so comfortable in front of an audience, or at least you're able to really portray that.
Mhm.
Now, being a kid who grew up, you've been very open about your insecurities. How did you develop such wit, sense of humor, and a level of comfort that you have in front of an audience? Because some of the best ever CCMA gala dinners and or luncheons have
Oh,
been when you've hosted those things.
well, it's interesting because when I mentioned I always wanted to be Randy Travis or that kind of, my dad was into the very opery artists, the Hank Snows and all that, where you come out and you're very staunch and you do your thing, right?
Proper. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that was the bar for me. Like that's how a show's done. And then I got into having records on the radio, started playing different venues, and I wanted to be all cool like these guys who just went on and they were just cool and didn't say much, right? But it wasn't me because I'd get off stage and then I'd be this card backstage and being a goofball. And then I'd go on stage and maybe something like the monitor would squeal or I'd forget a lyric and I'd get mad and I'd kind of pull these hissy fits, and just taking it too seriously. And then a couple of things happened. We opened up for John McBride, Terry McBride and the Ride at
Yep.
Merritt Mountain Music Festival. And they were on for an hour and I swear they played 3 songs and he just talked to the audience. And it was off the hook great. And I actually got to write with him later on after that. He had just a big inspiration for me. And I was like, so that's how you entertain. And then I was doing a tour of dates in these small theaters and something went wrong with like the microphone stand broke or something. And I made a joke of it and everybody laughed and I just went with it. And then all of a sudden it was like a light bulb went on. Like the person I was off stage and the person I was on stage were the same person now. And it was like, okay, now it's not work. Now it's fun. And you can take your art seriously. You can take your craft seriously. You can practice and make sure the show's as great as it can be. But if the monitor squeals, it's a monitor squealing. Who cares? And you make fun of it. If the mic stand breaks, you make fun of it. And that led to being more comfortable in my skin. It led to better music. It led to all these things. And that ebbs and flows. We all, as artists, and having artists in your roster, they have insecurities about everything. We all do.
Of course. Yeah. We're all
But
human beings. And you're not alone in that for sure.
well, everybody, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
the thing that you have to be reminded of, and we have to remind each other. But the thing that I am so thankful for is that I'm not compartmentalized anymore. So you see a lot of people, politicians, there'll be one person over here and one person over there. And I'm just not, and I'm just comfortable in being myself, which is a bit goofy. And then that helps create a better show.
Right. And the ability to be comfortable in your own skin substantiates your security with yourself. And it's something that you can, enjoy on the radio. But we all know as consumers too, if you've been to a show as a patron and something goes wrong and the artist handles it well, that can be the most magical, memorable moment of the entire night.
It's always the way, right? Like, and we talked about some of the artists on your roster. Like Brett Kissel is a great entertainer. He's this young guy who he's got the gift of gab. He's got all this kind of stuff, but there's not really much that would phase him because he's been doing it for so long. He's still a young guy, but he started so young, and good for him. He's the same guy off stage as he is on stage, and I can attest to that. And that's the height that an artist should attain or should aspire to, right? And I didn't realize that early on. I thought that I had to be a certain thing,
Yeah.
and I still do to a degree, but
I'm glad you mentioned Brett because he's one of those guys who's extremely extroverted. But it doesn't matter if you're having a one-on-one conversation with him or if he's in front of 20,000 people. He is the same guy.
yeah,
It's I've never met somebody so effervescent. And and another thing that he's got is he's got this incredible memory, and he'll remember the names of
I
fans, and
know.
he'll remember the names of their moms and their pets, and it's just like his ability to connect with people through that extroversion is just incredible.
Yeah, we're
It's a real gift.
we won Group of the Year a few years back for the 3rd time. It was amazing.
Right
And
in
then
Saskatoon.
and then we did a
Yeah.
show, and Brett was on the show, and he brought like a bottle of champagne and a card hey man, just thinking of you guys, congratulations, high fives, and this is really before he was ringing the bell, right? Like, and you're just like, is that for real? Like, is this guy Oprah or something? Like, how does he? But he's the same with anything. If you have a birthday or you got a gold record, he celebrates it the same way. And so, and it's neat because there's a lot of people in this industry who are like that maybe don't get celebrated that way too. Like, I mean, the Hunter brothers, they've got that genuine thing to them as well. And it's really refreshing to see. And it's, you try to follow those people, you try to go in that direction. And that's, they're setting the benchmark really high for everybody else. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah, there's something to be said for, I think the level of creativity that you can access when you're comfortable in your own skin, when you don't feel like you have to embrace some sort of persona that isn't you in order to achieve success. You can just be yourself. And Hunter Brothers exemplify that as well. They've got great at that. And as you've grown in your career, I mean, I've never seen you any other way than the way you've been since I've known you in over 20 years, which is, you're very extroverted, but if you get you one-on-one, you can be a bit more introverted of a human being. You're very engaged,
yeah.
Right? But you've always been this guy who's comfortable as a songwriter and working solo and creating on your own, and yet you collaborate very well with others, and that's a real gift because most people in the industry only have one or the other.
Maybe on the surface, it seems I collaborate well with others. I get in those. Creative battles, where it's like, not that I get confrontational, but I get in these creative battles where you think it should be one way. And so you're kind of always, what do they call it? Passive aggressively kind of, nattering and trying to get it to change and stuff like that. It's just because I believe in stuff so much, but I love collaborating, but I actually find it pretty difficult because my two sisters were older than me, so I kind of grew up almost as an only child. And that's kind of how things are when I'm co-writing. It's like, if I'm the big dog in the room and everybody does as I say, this is going to be a great day. If I got to work at learning something from somebody else, I don't know how this is going to go. But every time I do, and I drop the ego and stuff, it's amazing. Like I'm learning to collaborate, and here I am, I'm over 30 years old, Jim, and I'm still learning how to collaborate.
Well, I don't want to assume that I understand and can empathize with everything that's going on inside your head, but I would challenge you on that respectfully, because if you look at all the success you've had as a musician, that's all collaboration, right?
Yeah.
The Roadhammers project, all collaboration. Mm-hmm. And look at all the co-writes you've done over the years, including ones for other artists.
Yeah.
So you had to at times swallow your ego or whatever you want to call it, put that aside and put your best foot forward creatively. And you've been able to do that in spades. So I'm sure it doesn't always meet your own personal imaginary expectation, but it's pretty impressive to those of us who are bearing witness to it.
Right on. Yeah, it's been fun, man. And the Hammers more than anybody, because those guys have, taught me and continue to do so even through what we're recording now, just, the push-pull of collaboration. Because as we are a band, we're all doing our own thing. Clay's got the congregation and his solo rock stuff, and Chris has a lot of studio stuff he's doing, and he's always writing with people too. So they're growing as writers. Aside from me, I'm growing as a writer, or whatever we all do on our own. And then when you come together, your superpowers have augmented a little bit, right? So
yeah, there's different flavors in the mix all of a sudden.
That's right. And you being a promoter, agent, manager, label guy, all this kind of stuff. All those things require, collaboration with people, and it's just a people business. And we all go through seasons where we've learned so much from other people. And I got to say that with those guys, it's just a renewing well of being taught something. And it's one of those things that it's really good. And you're like, I hope this doesn't end. You know what I mean? Like even if we don't have a number one single or something like that, you're just like, I hope that next year we're still playing together. I hope the next year we're still writing. It's like, I'd hate for this to ever end. So I hope we're like the Stones and we're kind of old guys and still rocking and rolling, because the heartbeat's still there.
And I would imagine you guys have looked to the Stones, looked to bands like Aerosmith to figure out how you're going to evolve this badass persona, right? Because the music is, it's sort of aligned with this, being young, being a rebel, all of the things that really work for you well in your 30s or your
Mhm.
20s, right? But
Mhm.
as you get into your 50s and 60s, pulling that off authentically is a bit more of a challenge, right?
Yeah, I would say that a few artists would come to mind as to who we'd look to, like the Stones for sure. But that's a timeless rock and roll. It's three chord blues rock, and it certainly has um, some a heartbeat in our music too. But I'd say artists like ZZ Top, these guys weren't in their 50s and 60s running around the stage. They were just real cool with those subtle moves and stuff, and that aged very well. Artists like Bob Seger, I mean, his music and his performance and all that aged very well. Neil Young, as wild and crazy of a guy he was, his persona was, I guess his persona and music were the same, but it's not like he's running around like Mick Jagger. You know what I mean? Mick's like
Hmm.
70 whatever, and he's running around the stage.
Neil Young's a badass, but very much in his own way.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's not, and so as we work through this new music, it's more of the message. It doesn't have to be, super in your face, like a, machine gun rock and all that kind of stuff. Um, but you looking back at the original Hammer stuff, it wasn't like that either. It was heavier than the stuff that was on radio at the time. Different guitar tones, using Gibson guitars instead of Tellys, stuff like that. And now, as we grow older and we are more mature musicians and knowing how to record things differently, it's the tones and stuff like that I think add more gravitas to what you do,
Yeah.
which has to be commensurate with the age. It has to make sense.
And you've talked at certain points too about maybe adding a new member to the band because you sort of have this nucleus of the cast,
Hmm.
but you've talked about potentially bringing in a feature vocalist for an album project, and
Hmm.
I think that's brilliant too because it does give you the ability to pivot with some new material and go in a different direction.
Yeah, we always thought it'd be really great if we could find, like, we had Kenny Greer playing steel with us, and he played on Lunatic Fringe. He's with Red Rider, one of the original
Right.
members, Red Rider, and so Kenny brought that rock and roll swagger to what we do, and he, like Clay brings a rock and roll swagger, but Kenny brought a elder statesman rock and roll swagger, right? So when we were going through some challenges, we were still touring in Canada here, but we were in the States. And we'd go in the States, we'd be down there for weeks at a time, and we'd come home, do a run of shows, and Kenny would be in our band. And it was interesting. And Kenny may not know this, but we'd be lamenting, we had this problem, or this guy said this, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And Kenny's like, what do you care? Like, do your thing, or tell him to piss off. Or there was just more chest puffing of, hey, you got to remember who you are and what you do, and that confidence in a time where maybe we didn't have it, and we wanted to find that I got off on a diatribe there, but finding a female who could play steel or slide or something like that, and then having that rock and roll female voice, kind of like Eric Church, brings on the road as well. That
Right.
would be really great to augment this band with. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe do a record with sort of like a Lizzie Hale type
Mhm.
vocalist, or back in the day, Joan Jett, somebody who brings some real, a
Yeah.
feminine aspect to it, but a lot of masculine and gravelly energy, right, in the delivery. It could be
Yeah.
really cool for you guys. Yeah, it's it.
Yeah, yeah, Bonnie Bramlett, who plays, lap steel. That would be great. It's a tall order, and we actually, there's a girl named Christine Campbell in on the East Coast, and she is brilliant. So if anybody gets a chance to check out Christine Campbell, and she did a couple of shows with us on the East Coast, and she's just had little ones. So I mean, maybe that's somebody that we could hook up with, or somebody like that. But it's got to happen organically, right? You can't
Yeah.
engineer that kind of thing, or it just doesn't work. But having a female voice in the band, not just off stage, but obviously on record, would open up your content too. Like, there's just more you could do.
Let's talk a little bit about how you have successfully navigated being a touring musician for over 20 years and being a good dad. Like, how do you pull that off? Because that's a lot of eggs in one basket to keep together.
Yeah, I don't know. If I can figure out how to do that, it'd be great. You should talk to my kids. Uh, it's You know what? I've been very lucky because um, I'm not a I'm not a guy who gets lost in a studio for weeks on end. You know, when I'm doing a project, maybe a little bit of that, but I'm pretty good at putting it away and just calling it a day. And you know, it's time to go to Caleb's ball game or Grace's horseback riding lesson, and I'll go over and do that. And the hardest thing for me though is like anyone is shutting the phone off. And if I can do that, I get the mental real estate that I need to be a present dad. Not touring this summer has really helped a lot. It's helped maybe underscore what is the opposite of what you think. You know, maybe I haven't been there for as much as I think I have. Now I'm starting to see the rewards and benefit of that day in, day out being there, and having the kids home every day is really nice too. Being in morning radio actually is great because you do have the bulk of your day as well. So
Right.
although it's early, it is a great gig and it's a great time slot because, you know, when I get home just before lunch, kids are, you know, up and about and they got their routine established, and Caleb's building something outside and I'll go give him a hand, or, you know, Grace wanted to redo her room, so we've been working on that. And we also had our kids later in life too, right? So my wife and I, we traveled literally the world together before we even started the Hammers. Like, I think about that.
Right.
Kind of got all the minutia of starting your own business, which a lot of young people are doing. It takes 24/7, and we did it. And I'm glad we did, but it affords us a little more time now that all my free time is being at home.
Do you see some of your creative genetics in your kids, you know, and in their
Well,
own way, obviously?
my daughter, she's great at, well, she does a lot of TikTok videos and all these kind of things, and she likes to create and make up. She can make up plays and all that kind of stuff on a dime, you know, and she's really got an artistic flair when it comes to decorating and all these sorts of things. So she's got that artistic side, but she's also got a very analytical side too. And then Caleb, he's like my dad on one plane, where he's very he's got the math brain, you know, he just sees math. He's brilliant at it. But he plays piano too. We force him to practice at gunpoint, but he's quite good, and he's natural, and he writes the odd song. So Grace will come up with lyrics. You know, I'll see a sheet in her room of her coming up with poems and lyrics, and then Caleb, he'll work on a melody on the piano, and it's just like, where did that come? What song is that? He's go, oh, just something I made up. So it's certainly there, but I'm not. I mean, I got a studio in the house, and they've never really used it, and I'm always saying, hey, if you guys ever want to do anything, you know, I've got all the stuff you need to create whatever you want to create. But I've never pushed it, and the time will come when it's supposed to, I guess.
That's smart, because sometimes I think if you push it, it feels like a chore, and if you don't, then it's their idea. It's something they can take ownership of, and they'll enjoy it just so much more, you know.
Well,
And
you're the same thing though. You're a great dad. You're always on. I always see stuff going on Instagram. You're always doing stuff with the kids. So you're working out, but your kids are doing that too. And that's one of the most important things that I've been taught, is that if you're going to the bank, you bring your kids along, you know. They may not like it, you know, they all the time, but if you have to do a chore, you get your kids to come and help you. And that's how they learn. And it creates a bond that, you know, a forced, hey, let's go to the ball game. Those things are great too, but that's not always bonding. It's those little moments, right? And, you know, going to the beach together, building a birdhouse, whatever it is.
yeah, one of my favorite things to do with them is I love working out with them, obviously, but and this might sound very strange to people, but if I've got a difficult or a confrontational phone call I have to make, I like to have them in the room, and I like to have the person on speaker so that they can really watch in real time de-escalation tactics, you know, how you sort of go into a call with an objective or something that you'd like to achieve, and how
Yeah.
you end up getting there without necessarily, you know, crushing the other person, and all of those, you know, definitely not a parenting expert. I'm not claiming that, just for people out there, but when you expose your kids to those things, as opposed to taking them away from it or going, you know what, maybe this won't be good for them to hear. It's like, it's real life. And, you know, whether they're encountering a schoolyard bully or maybe a teacher they're not getting along with,
Yeah.
you know, just having some idea, some semblance of tactics and strategies to understand how to read people, and then how to navigate and work around them. And, It's funny. We've learned to, in our house, frame people who are difficult as a real gift to us because they teach us how to deal with difficult people. Because guess what? The world's full of them. They're not going away.
Yeah.
So,
True.
so that's always been fun and rewarding.
And if you have a setback, if you show them how to bounce back from that, or how to recover, or how to, stick handle around a setback, that's something that will be more valuable than any other lesson they can learn, because we're all going to have those things. And I think that's one of the things that kids don't have the ability to do right now is, or they don't have the muscle of resiliency. There's a lot of that maybe not being taught. We're in such a
Right.
quick gratification society that that patience and that waiting, and then the resiliency from getting knocked down back and back from all the no's you're going to get in life until you get the yes.
Well, and we do have these movements too that are great for creating awareness, like, the Pink Shirt Day, the anti-bullying.
Mm.
I've talked about this before. It's like it's great to have awareness, but then what do you do with it once you're aware? And it's
Yeah.
so important then to go, hey, listen, sometimes bullying doesn't show up in the form you think it is, or sometimes you're actually the purveyor of bullying people because you're telling them what to do. And it's good to be aware of that, conscious of that, and then learn to self-regulate on that front, right? Especially if you're like my oldest one, who's, she's boisterous and tough and gets her way a lot, but the last thing, she's also got a real tender heart. The last thing she would ever want to be considered is a bully, right? So just making her aware of considering other people's perspectives in the rooms and asking questions before she takes actions. Those are good things. And so these movements are great for awareness, but they don't often dig into the strategies and tactics. We see that as well with mental health. It's like, Belle, let's talk. Okay, well, talk about what? Because our yeah, right. Our culture has become so disengaged from the process of working through conflict, right? You heard it when you were a kid. I heard it when I was a kid. Don't talk about politics or religion, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, maybe those are things you should talk about, because you should learn to appreciate other perspectives and understand that people can hold competing narratives in their mind and work through them and figure out where they really stand on issues, and that you can love somebody who's opposed to you on one particular issue because that issue doesn't define their entire character and shouldn't, right? Because maybe they're just working through it and they're going to end up on the opposite side of the fence along with you at some point. And so anyway, it's something I'm passionate about, because I just think the music industry is a good example of that too. We've got this great community. Everybody seems to support each other and love each other, but we have a lot of competition. So it's like, how do we work through our differences? How do we really end up on the same team and not just pretend to be when we're shaking hands at the CCMAs, right? And how do we put any lingering animosity really behind us? And I think that's through really honest, engaged conversation.
Well, it's also through just pretend you're on a sports team. Pretend the music industry is all one sports team. It's a little different because every play you make could be beneficial to yourself personally, but actually having been in this industry for and we've both been in this industry for the same length of time, but so many cycles come and go that every time I get squirrely about that guy got that single, or that guy got to write with so and so and I didn't, then another door opens up and you're going to write with so and so. Like it never ceases to amaze me. And my wife will always say, like, I'll get down about something and something about competition or whatever. And she'll say, yeah, you remember the time you worried about blah, blah, and blah, blah, blah. Do you remember what happened then? Nothing. It was okay. And it's a small business, man. It's like, no matter where you go in the world, it's a small business.
But it's also so important to be surrounded by people like your wife. That's a great example, who are willing to challenge your narrative on things, because it's easy to go down that road of self-pity. I do it. We're all human. And to have somebody who's strong and secure enough around us to go, wait, you're off track on this.
That's right.
I'm not going down that road with you, because I know that I know that's not the best road for you to go down.
Let me change your diaper and we'll talk about it in the morning.
Yeah, totally. So she's been, and I know we haven't talked about her much on this call, but she's been just a foundational aspect of how you've maintained such a great family, dynamic while you've been a touring musician. And she's also been probably really a powerful pillar of mental health for you as well, by helping you
Oh
get
yeah.
back on track and working with you on perspective.
Oh yeah. Well, we met when she was 15, I was 16, and we basically took off and hit the road when I was 19 or so or whatever. Well, early 20s, and we just started traveling together. She was always there with me, and it's, then she went back to become a nurse in her 30s, early 30s. But she's been a business partner to me. She, still is very active in dealing with the books and things like that. But she just has like that 30,000 foot perspective, that strata kind of overview that I lose a lot, because I get myopic, like a lot of people do. When you're passionate about something, as you're chasing that thing, and it's that, eye of the tiger, man. And
Well, if you want to
like,
win, you got to be super focused. You have to be hyper focused. But the problem with
that's the
that is
problem, right? And then you
you
lose
end
the
up losing
periphery.
perspective. Yes.
Yeah. So, and she's a great sounding board, and she thinks sometimes she thinks I'm just pandering to her, or not pandering, but placating her is to be involved. I'll be like, yeah, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? She'll be like, what to do. Like, why are you asking me? Just so I feel involved? I'm like, no, I need your input. I want your input. And that's never changed. It's not as needy as it used to be, but it's good counsel. That's why we're married. That's the way we're built. The male and female perspective, and just
And
being a part.
she's not afraid to tell you when you're wrong.
Yeah, and that's really important, because, and I've never really been surrounded by a lot of yes people per se, but I could imagine there's a lot of people in this industry maybe who are, and that would be very disorienting. It'd be like flying in the clouds all the time. You wouldn't really know where you're going or what's up and down. But she certainly rights the ship all the time, and does it very quickly, and it's great.
Well, we see that in high levels of this business, right? Where people are just paralyzed to challenge the artist out of the fear as a manager or an agent that they might get fired. And
Yeah.
and so they'll just go along with everything, no matter how crazy it is. And then you've got, a situation, Michael Jackson, good example, where, think about the life he could still have, the legacy he would still be contributing to if someone
Crazy.
had sat him down and went, "Hey, dummy, you're doing some dumb things here. Now
Yeah.
you're not a bad person. Your intent's
Here's
good,
your other
but
glove. Here's your
yeah,
other glove on
but
your dead
but
friend.
we have to sort through some things here, because otherwise you're going to end up, you could end up exactly where he did, right? And
Yeah.
and
Awful.
it's heartbreaking when you see that happening at levels where somebody should be strong enough in that process to challenge respectfully, out of the best
Right.
intention for them.
No, Elvis, I think putting shag carpet on the ceiling's a great idea.
Yeah.
Like, come on, are you serious? Who didn't? Come on, Red, you should have said something. But yeah, but I don't care if you're in the music business or you own a welding shop or you're selling shoes. We all need people around us to build us up in a positive way, and just reel us in when we're being jackasses. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever got a chance to read the biography of Jerry Weintraub. You ever heard of Jerry?
No,
So he
who's Jerry?
managed. He was the promoter for Elvis Presley. Worked with Colonel Parker.
Okay.
He also managed Frank Sinatra for a long time.
Wow.
He was the producer of the rebooted versions of Ocean's 11 with Brad Pitt, Matt Damon. So very accomplished guy. He passed away a few years ago, but his book, which was gifted to me by Tom McKillop, who's just a sweetheart of a man in his own right. But Tom sent me that book, and it gave me a lot of insight into patterns of how artists think, and how you've got to be on the creative vanguard with them, but that even the most creative, most brilliant people, their good ideas are only going to be about 80-20. So they might have 80% good ideas, but 20% are really bad. And
Yeah.
what he talked about in that book is the fact that most people are inverted to that. So it's like 20% good
Right.
ideas, 80% are terrible. And he's like, just learning to sort through ideas with the artist in order to prioritize and then initiate and execute on the ones that work the best. And I know you, and I know how creative you are, and your wheels are always turning. So that must be something you struggle with, where it's like, I want to do 50 things. I know I only have the time to do 5. Where do I start?
I want to do everything. And then it's like, oh crap, there's no time. It happens all the time. I mean, just this summer's been great. I haven't had that many dates, and I've had lots of time to do stuff and concentrating on radio. And we bought a boat, so we're just being a good family and having fun. And then
By dates, you mean concerts and shows. I just want to make sure everybody knows that Jason McCoy does not have a Tinder profile. So it's concerts and shows he's referring to.
that you know of, but
That I know.
that anybody knows of. No, but it's been nice that we haven't had these shows and we got time off and stuff. But over the last few weeks, I've been kind of saying yes to a bunch of stuff. Like, oh yeah, and there's this project, and so wants me to write with so and produce a thing, and doing this radio show and this other stuff. And now I got a bunch of acoustic shows. It's like I was telling my wife, I looked down at my calendar for September. I was like, oh crap, what? I'm busy. It's like it's happened again. So I do need to stop the wheels turning, and I do need to focus. And the biggest thing is always thinking you're losing out on something by saying no. But it's back to that thing of just relax, because other opportunities will open up down the road. And if it's not for you, it's okay, because there's a
Right.
lot going on. And
And if it's truly meaningful, it might circle back around at some point, maybe even in a
yeah,
better form.
that's right. Why you don't have to chase things. You should, and it's interesting though, because this industry teaches all its youngins to chase things, because we have to fight and push our way in. And then once you're in, or once you're doing things, you want to stay there. But we just constantly push for more and more and more. Everybody does. But and I guess that's part of being driven and whatever. But I'm starting to relax a little more, and not just say yes to everything, although September doesn't look like
Now,
it.
one of your passions has been co-writing, but you've also produced other artists, you've mentored other artists, you've done some artist development. When are you going to finally hang a shingle and start a management company or a label or something in that space? Because I feel like it's just been coming for so long for you, and no bullshit. You know so many domains of this business from so many angles. I think you'd be great at it.
Well, thank you very much. You know what is interesting? Like, I've thought of that many times, and I've been involved in starting different things, like Extreme Mudfest in Alberta.
Right.
I helped get that going. I'm not involved with that now, but that was neat to see how that worked. I've been involved with running my own label. With what we do with the Hammers. It's open road, but it's all through Airstrip, our label. So I do have experience with those things. What I don't have, I don't think I would start that, because I don't have passion for those things specifically. If I had the right partner to help with the admin and maybe interfacing with the industry in a certain way that I either don't feel comfortable with, or I don't have the certain skill set for it,
Well, that would be
then I
your role, though. I mean, you're creatively brilliant. You don't need to be the person doing the paperwork.
well, that's the thing. And that's exactly right. And not just paperwork, but there is a the guy who goes out to the showcases, to the events, to the president's dinner at the CCMAs and things like that, which I do like to do. But there's the guys who are really great at the, I don't want to say networking, because it sounds that sounds contrived, but the ones who are good at the hang. I'm pretty much a in and out guy, and I want to get back to the studio and create, or I want to sit down in the hotel room and write, not necessarily go and hang with the label heads who could further the project, which is the kiss of death for somebody trying to launch projects, right? But you have to recognize your strengths. And so I used to think, I'm going to do all these things, and there's been fits and starts of that, but it's been a big waste of time for not just myself, but those that I've engaged to pursue those projects that only go so far. And I didn't really sit down and take stock of, hey, where's my real passion lie? And I think, I don't want to say I would retreat back to songwriting, because that's one of the things I hold most sacred. Like, that's where it all starts. And the only issue I have with songwriting sometimes is that I songwrite with a marketing brain sometimes. And most of the time I don't, but sometimes it's like, okay, we're going to write this song, and then we're going to get Chevy involved and do a video, and then we're going to give away all these blah, blah, blahs. And it's like, dude, just write the song and let's record it, and then we'll look at those things. But for me, sometimes it's like it has to be all at once, right? And it's a little limiting when you're writing a song. And I
So
need
where
to feel
does your passion lie? Is it really more in the creative and that the initiative of writing songs? Is it being on stage? Like at this point in your career, where's the place that you feel the most at home?
There are a few, so it's not just one, but I've pared it back from everything, which is a big step for me. It is definitely with the Hammers, because that's a baby that just has been a prodigal son. That's just gone around the world and done its thing, and I want to keep that going because Clay, Chris, and I, we owe a lot to the fans. We owe a lot to our industry who's been supportive. We owe a lot to ourselves to do our best for that. So we want to keep that going. We all do. I feel super at home on stage with the Hammers, super at home. And the other thing is songwriting, for sure. It's definitely a passion. Like some of my most exciting times in music have been in creating something that's just maybe a goofy song that I'll never see the light of day, but you're high-fiving your co-writer like you just, wrote War and Peace or something like that, But the other place I really feel at home, and I got on a great run of this and then stopped, was I was doing a one-man show for a while where I had a screen behind me, and we had some pre-taped interviews of, artists like Terry Clark and Johnny Reed, and I was interviewing them. It seemed like it was a live feed, but it was all timed, and I got to create that thing. And then that allowed me to go into small theaters, like whatever size it would have as 300 to 700. And I just interact with the audience acoustically. Now, I'd love more than anything to put together a small super group of 4 musicians, like kind of semi bluegrass, almost like what Marty Stewart's doing, Sturgill Simpson kind of thingy. But it's that thing back to that Terry McBride, that interacting with the audience. And the reason being because I remember being a person in the audience in those types of shows, and how those artists seem so, the ones who could really break that barrier between the artist and the stage and just really put on a show with just a broom handle or what, like I got to that point when I was doing those things where I didn't have to play any music. I could just talk and be goofy and do a bit of stand-up, almost that kind of thing. But then I refocused to the Hammers and things changed, and I just kind of let go of that ball. I'd like to pursue that more, because now with the way shows are happening, smaller venues, I'm just booked in to do a couple of these acoustic shows. That's kind of my thing.
And that's the type of show that you could almost plant and build a residency around. Where you're putting it in a theater and people are coming to you, especially right now with COVID maxing out the amount of patrons at 100 people. It's like, do a deal with the theater, plant it for 2 weeks, get the production and the lighting just nailed, and and create something whereby people actually, it's a destination, they come in for it.
A promoter or agent? Like if you knew a guy.
I don't know any guys.
Why do all the promoters and agents say that? No, that's
the right type of idea.
But that feels more at home to me than all of the other things. But it doesn't mean that I don't want to pursue all the other things. There's still passions too. So as much as I love getting out with Big Marshall and being a loud goofball with the Hammers, I just love playing acoustic music. With 3 or 4 awesome musicians, and it's Western Swing Authority. There you go, right there.
Yes.
That kind of thing, just with great musicians, back to that thing of the Merle Haggard, artistry, and the Buck guys, like that super power, that super group of 4 people.
Right.
It doesn't take much to do a big thing.
But if you grabbed a theater that's within the listening radius of where you're doing your morning show, you could literally promote this thing yourself. Like, you could be, I mean, obviously you've got to work things out with the radio station, so there's no conflicts. I'm not discounting and diminishing the work and the process of it, but you could literally just own this thing, run it in a theater, leave it in there for multiple dates, really refine the show down to a science. And that'd probably be a blast for you. And not that I'm telling you should do it, but good thing to focus on right now to get your creative juices flowing again and get that reconnection with people, because I know how much you love that.
Yeah, I really do. Like, and for a lot of years, I fought it. It was like, I don't know if I want to go out and I just want to stay home and all this stuff. And it's like, man, you just admit it. You love being a ham. You know, you got it. It's what I do. And it doesn't matter what situation I'm in. Like you say, if you're hosting the CMAOs or CCMA lunch or doing the morning show or playing a show with the hammer, it doesn't matter. It's what I
Right.
do. And
Yeah. And I think
like
if you're an
play as a
entertainer,
rock star, and I'm the goofball.
you need to have a little bit of that. You have to, uh, even if you don't love people, you've got to love attention to a degree. Otherwise, it
Oh
just won't work.
no, it's what is it? We're all here because we're not all here, right? So, but it's good. I always think that watching my kids be creative when they're not. My son just sitting at a piano and he's never been on stage like to perform for anybody. He has no desire to. So there's that purest form of enjoying music for what it is. Mine's always been like, hey, if I learn this, I get to do this. And that's
Right.
always the way it's been with theaters for me. It's like, okay, if we play a couple of songs, I get to tell jokes. So let's go. I'll learn your silly songs so I get to play. You need me to write a song? I'll write a song and then I get to go play for the people. That's kind of how it is for me.
Yeah, you love the applause, or the laughs as much as you love the applause.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's hard to draw the line of what's better, the music or the talking with the audience. So, and both equally is attractive to me.
Jason, I love it. We've been doing this for over an hour now. Thank you
Oh,
so much
really?
for the time. Yeah, it just flew by.
Right on.
So,
Well, and
I
this is great what you're doing.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it, and that's the goal. Is just have on guests that I have a relationship with, or that I know, and just allow people to be a fly on the wall and absorb the conversation and get out of it whatever they do, and make it just straight up and candid. So I'm having a blast with
Cool.
it, and I'm thrilled you were on, and I'd love to have you on again if you wanted to do it.
Oh man, it'd be great. Well, when we get some new music rocking, we'll get on and talk about that. And you should have your own radio show, man. Talk about radio. Holy smokes!
Well, I do have a radio background. I worked in radio for years, but
Did you?
I,
I
I
didn't know. No, you've boxed, you've promoted, you've agent, you've all this stuff. I didn't know you did.
yeah, I've always had a lot of things to chase as well, but I really felt like in this time of COVID, it's a good idea to get the community together, to have some
Yeah,
conversations, talk about how people are feeling, remind people that even though we're all isolated, we're not necessarily alone in what we're feeling and thinking in this community, and so that's been fun for me. And I like listen, I like attention too. I don't have the skill set that you do, but I enjoy when people get a chance to listen to one of these podcasts and they give me their
yeah.
feedback, and it's usually positive, thanks mostly to the guests, because the conversations are just so honest that by virtue of that they're very compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good. I mean, the thing is, everybody from all over the world and in all facets of the industry. So you're not without anything to talk about ever. And you have unique insight to it because you've been in everything from, like I say, promoting to being an agent to being a label guy to be whatever, manager. So it's interesting to get your questions too, because there's not too many people in that unique specific, role or roles, I should say.
Honor to have you on, my friend, and thanks for being part of it. And we'll definitely have you on again. Get you out there
Awesome.
promoting a new project, and thanks for taking the time again today. I
Right.
appreciate you.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Take care.